aerospace and defense manufacturing,
machines and automation,
additive manufacturing,
smart manufacturing,
global manufacturing economy.
Welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals, powered by SME. From the design screen to the shop floor to final assembly, we drive the conversation about making manufacturing smarter by connecting people who are passionate about manufacturing.
Hello and welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get new episodes delivered to your feed each week. I'm your host, Steve Plumb, Editor-in-Chief for SME Media. I'm joined today by Brigitte de Vet, who has been the CEO of 3D printing giant Materialise for just over a year. Prior to becoming CEO, she served as general manager of the company's medical operations and an industry executive for several other leading companies, including Johnson & Johnson's medical device and diagnostics group. Brigitte, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here.
So the last few years have been pretty busy for both Materialise and the additive manufacturing community overall. We continue to see a lot of new applications and technical advancements across a wide range of industries, but at the same time, companies are struggling to be profitable, and there's a lot of consolidation going on. What's your outlook for the next 5 years or so, or even more immediately?
Yeah, so a very good question, because indeed, there's different ways of looking at our industry at this point in time. Yes, there has been a lot of progress, but at the same time, I think we need to be honest to admit that we might not be where we thought we would be when starting out on this journey as an industry. Now, before I address the question on how I look at the future, I do want to reflect a little bit on the history of this industry and maybe give you my take on a couple of phases that we've gone through. I mean, Materialise, we've been in business for 35 years. We were there right at the start at this industry. We were one of the pioneers, so I think we've seen a lot in this industry, and I would say the good and the bad. Now, the way I look at this is that we spent at least a decade really figuring out how to get the technology to work. So very fundamental stuff. Once we had that figured out, we spent at least another decade to find meaningful applications for the technology. What can you meaningfully do with additive? The power is huge, but it is only there and only materializes, pun intended, when you choose the right applications for the technology. Now, we found a lot of meaningful applications in that decade. And I would say we then spent another decade at least to figure out how to turn some of this into valuable business models and make this a win-win for all stakeholders involved. And I would argue that the phase that we are now in is where we probably spent, maybe hopefully not a full decade, but at least, some time, which is the phase where we're trying to figure out how as an industry we can make this work. And I think you alluded to it. Over the last couple of years, we've seen a number of players struggle. I think we pride ourselves at Materialise to be a very profitable company. A profitable company, at least, at a decent level. But I don't think everybody can say that. So I would argue that the next phase of this industry really is to figure out how, as an industry, we can get to a level that is brings profitability for all stakeholders, next to the meaningful applications and the impact that we know we can have for some of these applications in the industry. Now, to answer your question specifically, how do I look at the next 5 years, and what would I hope that the future brings to this industry, next to kind of showing that as an industry we have relevance and continued relevance? I do think we will see potentially less fancy technology. We have very robust technology. We have working technology. What I think we need is these applications that scale, and more of these applications that scale, where we as an industry have the duty to bring solutions to companies that do want to scale. And we're not quite there yet, but I do believe over the next couple of years, we see more of that happen. And I'm very confident that that will happen because we've seen some of the meaningful applications scale in the medical or the healthcare sector. I think we have very good examples of that. And I absolutely believe that we can apply that to other applications and industries as well. I also believe that we'll see a phase where we'll have more collaboration. Some people argue for consolidation. Yes, that might be part of it. But what is certain is that we need more collaboration to come to these solutions for our customers, and that scalability that we need in this industry. And the last thing I would think is that over the next couple of years, we'll also see additive better integrate with the rest of the manufacturing ecosystem. It is a very valuable technology, but we do need to integrate it with the rest of the manufacturing technologies and the ecosystems that are out there if we really want to create the impact that we know it can have. So those are a couple of things that, I hope we'll see in the future. I do still absolutely believe that the potential of the additive technology is there. It's large, but we have to be careful. We've overhyped the potential in the past. It will remain what we've always called a slow revolution. It's a revolution because the impact can be so big, but it'll take some time. Step by step, we'll progress.
A couple things that you mentioned that I wanted to follow up on. One, during your overview of the history of AM, you mentioned, I think it was the third phase was identifying some of these applications to scale up. And I think in the current phase, the next phase was to implement some of those technologies. Where are you in the process? How far along in identifying these types of applications is the industry, and what's it going to take to accelerate that transition?
Yeah, so very good question. It's not an easy one to answer because, if we want to look at where we are on this journey, it really depends on the type of application. I think we can all say and acknowledge that the adoption of additive, for example, in the healthcare space, in the medical space, is absolutely there. It's proven, it's working. We see it in the impact it has on patients. We see it in the impact it has on healthcare cost globally. So we are further along on the journey of adoption in that application. But I think it's also fair to say that in other applications where we feel and know that the potential is huge, we're not quite there yet. And as an example, let's talk about the aerospace industry where we know the tremendous impact that additive can have just because of the design functionality, the advantages it has in kind of smaller series and low volume applications, the ways it can help to address supply chain issues, etc. So we all feel that and know that there's a huge impact, but I don't think we've seen the scaling of the adoption yet. There's lots we can learn from, the scaling that we've seen in the medical side, but there's still, a journey to be made. Now, to your question, what does it take to accelerate that adoption and the journey? I think we need to go back to, what our customers tell us. In one of the recent surveys that we've done with manufacturing companies around the world, we've very clearly heard that they are struggling with three things and really facing challenges there. One is the complexity of the adoption of additive. We're still making it difficult for our customers, whether that's uploading, downloading files and data throughout the whole process. There's no easy way to integrate the data throughout that digital thread yet. We're still asking customers to use different types of software depending on the equipment that you're using. So the complexity absolutely is still there. So what will it take to accelerate that adoption? It's certainly around, this reducing the complexity, simplifying things, creating ecosystems that integrate, that make the digital thread a reality. which is where software plays a huge role going forward. The second thing they struggle with is cost, the cost of a part. If we can't get the economics right, that will limit the number of applications that we're looking at. I think in those applications that we figured out, the economic side was definitely there and a positive one. But if we want to accelerate the adoption in more applications, we're going to have to get the cost of parts down. And that means that we need to create efficiencies. We need to reduce failures in the whole process. Learn from what we've done on one build before we start the next build. And again, I refer to integrating the data throughout the whole process to reduce the complexity. While integrating the data will also help us reduce the cost of a part, because that's the only way we'll be able to learn from something that happens at the back end of a process next time we start the process at the front end. Meaning that the quality of your build and the outcome, failures or non-failures of your build, should inform how you place support structures, as an example, or other stuff that you do in your build preparation next time you start your build. And getting that learning cycle to go does require data integration, hence an ecosystem that we all build. There's another thing that our customers struggle with, customers and non-customers, so manufacturing companies struggle with, is skills and competencies of their workforce. Additive is still a relatively young technology. There's still a lot of learnings, and I don't think we're at the level yet that we have the competencies that large-scale adoption and acceleration of adoption does require. Now, again, there's a number of things that I think we can do there to simplify. And just going back to what software can do, there's a lot of knowledge you can build into software. And using smarter tools here will help to reduce the load or the burden on finding the skilled workforce, etc. We will still need skilled workforce. So it's still a topic that we need to address. But it can reduce the burden a little bit. On those three challenges, lots to do, but also great opportunities because I do see real opportunities to address the challenge of, the complexity, the challenge of the cost of a part, and the challenge of, the skilled workforce that manufacturing companies need to have in-house to be able to scale adequately.
You had mentioned earlier that collaboration was a key to moving forward. And it seems like two of the three challenges that you brought up tie into that directly: the adopting common data standardization and the workforce challenge. And last fall, I believe, the Leading Minds Coalition was formed. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how that can work to solve some of these challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Leading Minds Coalition was formed with exactly this in mind, stimulating more collaboration within the different players in the industry, finding more solutions as an industry for our customers and help our customers adopt and scale additive faster. By pooling our resources as industry players to create awareness, to train and build those competencies and that skilled workforce that I talked about, but also stimulate the discussions and accelerate the discussions that are already taking place, but I do believe we can accelerate on standardization, reducing the complexity, starting with simple naming conventions, calling a technology one name without confusing our customers by calling the same technology in 5 different ways, but down to obviously standards where we'll work with the standardization organizations and those bodies that are doing an amazing job at creating those standards that are also needed, but aligning the group on pulling in the same direction on those initiatives, I do believe will help accelerate. So that's the purpose of that Leading Minds Coalition, to accelerate the collaboration that we need in this industry, and with that bring better solutions to our customers around the world.
How far along is the group in terms of actually, setting up working groups or working together to get the ball rolling on some of these projects?
So we just kicked off, not even 6 months ago. So I think it's exactly 5 months ago that we kicked off. So we're at the very early start, but we set ourselves, very sharp and clear goals for the end of this year, where at least we wanted to, show some progress on this. And I think the reality of our industry, which is what you referred to earlier in this podcast, that the industry is going through more difficult times. I think on the one hand really accelerates these discussions because we all see the needs to collaborate further and pool our resources. At the same time, it does mean that there's some uncertainty in the industry. And some players might concentrate rather on their own goods instead of looking at the bigger good of the industry, which is what we should all do, and keep a long-term objective in mind and the bigger picture in mind, and also in more difficult times.
Or even though additive has been around for 35 years or more now, it's still kind of characterized by innovation and advanced technology. And you had talked about need to focus more on the less fancy things in the real world. What's the balance there between innovation and real world applications?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not going to sit here say that we don't need any innovation anymore, but I think the balance needs to shift. The balance needs to shift more to applying what we have and using what we have to make it a success, improve the value, in more applications with what we have, rather than continuously, bringing out the next fancy thing, which at some point. Also, there's two things. One is it adds to the confusion because there's a new fancy thing, every 3 months, and customers are confused by, oh, what is this again? So it slows down certain efforts. And the second thing is it also creates a dynamic where, in the past at least, companies have waited for a next generation rather than getting started on the journey. And as I said, it's a journey. It's a slow revolution, but there's it's hard work to get to the impact that this technology can have. So the balance needs to shift away from innovation and fancy technology to more applications, collaboration between us as industry players to bring real solutions to companies with what we have, because we know with what we have and the technology that is there, we can already have a tremendous impact for a lot of these applications.
So you mentioned that healthcare has already made a lot of great progress. Aerospace and automotive typically are industries that are slow to make changes and for good reason, in some cases, safety critical, although there is in healthcare, obviously, as well. But do you see greater opportunity in growing those applications in those industries?
Well, I certainly see opportunities in those industries, and let me give you a bit more color to that. So we've seen the adoption on the healthcare side and the medical side. But honestly, we're still scratching the surface. So there's also still, a lot of potential, in that space that we've witnessed, in over the last couple of years, and I would almost say the last decade. But we're still scratching the surface in terms of the adoption of additive, and in terms of the adoption of the personalized solutions and patient-specific solutions that additive can bring. And if I look at the aerospace industry and the adoption there, obviously I've spent the first 8 years of my life in additive in the medical field, now having a much wider look. But what is striking to me and fascinating is that when I look at the aerospace industry and where we are there, I very much compare this to the medical industry, almost a decade back. And there's so much we can learn from the medical industry, which is why I'm so confident that in the aerospace industry, we'll get there. We'll definitely get there, and the potential is equally big. Now, you mentioned automotive. I would argue that at this point in time, the automotive industry is going through, their own challenges, given everything that is going on. But definitely the automotive industry, in different ways than the aerospace and the medical industry, certainly is an area where there's potential. But I would certainly look beyond those three as well. I think at this point in time, given the geopolitical situation, the defense industry at large, which is also very closely connected to the aerospace industry, also presents a large opportunity for the additive industry. And given the certain dynamics driven by the geopolitical discussions, I think that's a near-term opportunity that we as an industry also certainly have a responsibility to play in, and an opportunity to grasp here. So it's so that's certainly another area where as an industry we can look at. Now, there's also a whole range of industrial applications where, firstly, we're talking tooling, which is also the case for the automotive industry. Tooling really is a big opportunity there near term. So next to tooling, on the more longer term, there's certainly industrial applications that present an equal opportunity as well. Step by step, as an industry, I think the potential is large.
Is there a lot of commonality between the challenges and opportunities across industries, especially on the tooling side, or do you find that there are unique aspects for each?
It's a two-sided answer I would give you there. So there are certainly commonalities, independently from tooling. So look at the medical and the aerospace example that I gave you. Some of the discussions we are having as an industry, rightfully so, around the regulation, safety aspects, qualification, etc. There's a lot of similarities between the discussions, with the regulatory body in the medical industry and a regulatory body in the aerospace industry. Even though that the topic is such, or we're talking about very different things. We're talking about patients and we're talking about planes and others. But there's similarities there. At the same time, I think we also need to acknowledge and get, as an industry, also get better at seeing the unique differences between different industries. We can't apply the same solution and the same technology to everything. And to all applications, we do require application and industry-specific solutions. And, I can only refer back to what I said earlier. That's where the collaboration is so important, because as a company, you can't do everything by yourself. We need to pool resources as an industry and focus on where every individual player is strong, to make sure that we have an adequate solution for our customers in their specific applications in their various industries. So it's a two-sided answer. Yes, there are similarities, but at the same time, there's different solutions needed and application-specific solutions needed.
So you mentioned workforce development as one of the key challenges. It's a challenge across all of manufacturing and a lot of industries overall. You recently were named 3D Printing Innovator Award from TCT, Women in 3D Printing. Attracting women to manufacturing is also a big challenge. Has there been more progress, less progress, or where does Additive stand on that, and what will it take to attract more women into the industry?
Yeah, so obviously I was very pleased with getting the award, but honestly, the award was just as much as an award for every single person at Materialise and the progress that has been made over the last 35 years than anything else. Now, obviously, receiving an award is always also an opportunity to, show as a role model to others what is possible, etc. So yes, I was very pleased with that. But at the same time, I think it remains an important cause to bring more female leaders into this industry. But at the same time, I think the objective we should have as an industry is to bring a different generation of leaders, full stop, into our industry, whatever gender, because as I said, there's a couple of important shifts that we need to make, from fancy technology down to applications and bringing application specific solutions. From looking at our own technology to collaborating with others to bring a full solution to our customers with a much more collaborative mindset, leveraging the opportunities that we have with new technologies like AI and others that are given to us, which can accelerate some of the challenges that we're dealing with that I referred to earlier. All of that does require a different type of thinking. And so as an industry, I think we need to adopt that different type of thinking with, what I would call a next generation style of leadership. Generation not necessarily referring to age, but referring to a different mindset that we apply to some of the challenges that we have as an industry, and that remains a really important cause, and that's what we should be focused on as an industry, and also pool resources to address that.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? What do you mean by different mindset?
Well, so, take the collaboration as an example. A collaborative mindset requires all of us to think beyond our short-term immediate interest and think about the more longer-term, bigger interest and keep that in mind. Any type of collaboration or partnership is a give and take where it needs to be a win-win and where, sometimes you need to say, well, maybe in the short term, I need to give something, but the win on the long term is going to accelerate all of us and will be a positive one for me as well. It's a very different mindset, to think in ways of collaboration rather than a mindset of I push my own agenda. So that's what is one of the specific examples of what I was referring to.
So, as your position as CEO of Materialise, and also going to various industry events and being part of Leading Minds, what are some of the things that really excite you about the future of additive manufacturing?
Well, what excites me is the potential that we have and the impact that we can create. And I think in my first 8 years in this industry, in the medical industry, I've seen the potential. And it was obviously, particularly visible and rewarding, I would say, to see the impact we could have and we can still have on patients. I think one of my very first experiences with Additive was when I got exposed to a case where we had a patient that had been in a wheelchair for years and was struggling because of a disease at the hip that prevented that person from walking properly. And that patient had gotten various implants, and with every implant that patient got, there was less bone stock left, and the problem essentially got worse. That patient got one of our patient-specific implants, and a month after the intervention, he was able to walk again and live a normal life. Well, that's a huge impact that you have not only on that patient and the quality of life and the families, of those patients and what it means for them. It's also a huge impact on the healthcare cost, because rather than having yet another operation with a new implant a couple of years down the line, we stopped that revision cycle. And we know from our studies that hardly any of these patients ever come back, which is great news for the patients, but also for the cost of the healthcare systems, because we don't need to treat these patients again. So that impact is super rewarding. And that impact can be equally big, whether we talk about aerospace applications or industrial applications, automotive applications. And that's what I look forward to most, see that impact in more applications, having a larger impact on society at large, with a win-win for all stakeholders involved. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning, and that is what keeps me going, and that is what I'm going to keep talking about to everybody who wants to hear it or not hear it.
Yeah, I think those types of success stories are so important to share and get the word out and drive even more of them across the industry.
Absolutely.
Well, Brigitte, thanks again for joining us today. It's always interesting to learn about the latest advances in additive manufacturing, and look forward to seeing you at Rapid Plus TCT. Where can listeners go to learn more about Materialise, Leading Minds, or just additive in general?
Yeah, so everything you want to know about Materialise, best place to go is www.materialise.com, Materialise with an S. You also can find us at every important trade show, whether that's in the US or anywhere else, in this world. And we're always happy to answer questions and engage in a discussion to make sure that we turn additive into meaningful applications, and we bring solutions together with partners around the world to our customers. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you. And to learn more about the latest manufacturing trends and hear more of our podcasts, visit advancedmanufacturing.org, and be sure to like and subscribe to our feed.